population if fraction pt of kids are treated, where that could be 1/3, it could be 0.5, it could be 2/3. How can we understand this? Well, I'm going to show that we can understand this exactly in terms of what we just did, and you get a very simple expression for what the total gains of a real-world program are. So what is this gain? Conceptually, what we care about is two types of effects. There's average gains among treated. Oh, now my language here is also a little bit unclear. I'm sorry. Let's call these control schools, sorry, throughout. Treated schools, control schools. Okay, there's the average gain among treatment schools, and there's the average gain among control schools. And then there's a certain proportion of people who are in the treatment schools and a certain proportion of people who are in the control schools. Okay, again, my apologies for slightly imprecise language. Now, PT is the fraction of people in the area who are in treatment schools. So actually, this proportion in treated schools is just the, sorry, let me get to the next equation before I get there. Hold on, let me pause. Are you guys with me so far? Okay. We are going to define this new term P, okay? P is defined as the fraction in treatment schools. That's what this little p is. So in year one, in 1998, in the first year of the deworming program, only group 1 schools got treated. There were 25 of them. The 50 group 2 and 3 schools weren't treated. So in year one of the deworming program, in the real world case, we would say p equals 1/3. 1/3 of the kids in the area were in treatment schools. In 1999, group 2 got phased in, so p would go up to 2/3. Okay? The treatment effect in the treatment schools is this first expression. You can see this is the average outcome in the treatment schools, p equals 1, given that on average, share p around you are treated. So by making this step to focusing on the average proportion, I'm assuming that this cross-school externality effect is linear. There was a very good question before about nonlinearity. I'm just going to assume it's linear, which is basically what I've been doing throughout. Minus, what is this second term here? This is pure control. T equals 0, pt equals 0. So this is the treatment effect of me being in a treatment school surrounded by fraction p of other treatment schools relative to pure control. That's the average effect for the treatment schools. This second term is applicable for fraction 1 minus p of the population, the control schools. They're controlled, so they don't get the effect of being in treatment schools, but they also do benefit from, on average, having fraction p of schools around them, or pupils around them, be treated. That's the cross-school externality effect. So the effect for those schools is this first term minus the pure control term again here. The average given no treatment and no externalities. Okay? I've jumped like a step or two in doing this, the most important being that we're just assuming that if you're in an area with certain exposure to treatment, this fraction p are treatment schools, then the effect on average of the cross-school externalities is driven by that average proportion p. Let me just pause for a second. Can anybody do the math in their head as to what this is going to work out to? What's that top blue expression? It's fraction p times that difference in expectations. What is that difference going to be? Let me go back. Do you want to go back to the regression equation? Okay, so one possibility is that it equals, so we have this fraction p, and you're saying the effect is b plus c times p. What do people think? Does that look right? Explain, Martin, where that comes from.
So, okay, so the expression y, given that b equals 1 and pt equals 2 p, would be just the constant plus the marginal effect of pi times 1, so it's going to be b, and then plus marginal of pt, which is c, times the value of pt,
okay.
And then minus the rest is just
okay. How about the second expression? Again, the second expression is relevant for, no. The second expression is relevant for fraction 1 minus p. These are the control schools. And what's the second expression going to be? Just cp, right? By the same logic. There's no treatment effect. There's no b term because t equals 0. But there's still going to be this marginal effect of having more people around you be treatment schools. That marginal effect is c, and the average effect is driven by this proportion p, little p. Okay? So that's actually right. And it's exactly that expression. The algebra is straightforward, and it yields this expression, which is the average effect of a program in this population is obviously driven by the effect of being in a treatment school. This is the intention to treat effect b. It's driven by the magnitude of the cross-school externality c, and it's increasing in the proportion of population that's treated. So you can go through some thought exercises. If p equals 0, meaning no one's treated, what's the effect of this deworming program? 0. If p equals 1, we're in the full mass treatment program, and we're back to our average effect of b plus c, which we found before. In between, you kind of are scaled by the proportion of the population that gets deworming. And here we just assumed it's linear. So every additional proportion of people who get treated, you have a sort of constant increment in terms of benefits. So for instance, in year 1 of the program, when p equals 1/3, if we think that b, if we think that b is roughly 0.25, which is what we found when we took the difference between treatment and control schools, and I told you that the average cross-school externality effect was about 0.2, we can work this out. We can say, on average, the reduction in worm infections was so much, or we can even say this many worm infections were eliminated because of the program, given this particular treatment intensity of p. So that's kind of useful. Why is that useful? It's something we're going to come back to. In a few minutes, we're going to start talking about the cost of the program. So if we want to actually say what is the cost per infection eliminated, this actually gives us an estimate of the number of infections eliminated. We can start talking about cost-benefit once we have the benefit side. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of debate about this, and when we've tried to sort of get the information from epidemiologists who should know this, they claim there's no clear evidence on exactly what this looks like. So let me tell you the story. So you would say, look, the more people you treat, you were saying, you're just going to have a bigger and bigger effect. If you only treat a few people, you're not going to do much. But that may not hold in the entire range. Maybe you're right. Maybe over some range, the more people you treat and you clean up the environment by treating more kids nearby, yes, there's a greater benefit. But is the effect biggest going from 50% treatment to 60% or from 80 to 90? But maybe once you're already at 80 or 90% treatment, the effect of getting all the way to 100% is very small. So you could imagine that you have different shaped effects in different regions, and no one knows exactly what those regions are. In theory, yes. In theory, with our data, given that we have a range of proportions p, we could try to estimate it nonlinearly. The problem with us is since we only have 75 schools in these different clusters, I showed you that the schools are clustered near each other in different ways. We don't have enough data, enough statistical power to estimate the nonlinearities. So when you try to estimate nonlinear effects, basically what happens is you get really big standard errors. So the best we can really do is precisely estimate linear effects, maybe quadratic, but not the full sort of nonlinear relationship you would like. Yeah, Michelle. That's a great question. So the units here are whatever the units of y are. So we could be looking at infection, we could be looking at school attendance, and then this will be in whatever units y is in. So everything's defined in terms of those units. P is unitless. It's just a proportion that sort of scales things up and down. In terms of deciding what is a good program, that's where the cost-benefit ratio may come in. So we may say, look, this program eliminated so many infections. Well, the World Health Organization may, and they do, they have standards for how much disease you need to eliminate per dollar for it to be considered an attractive investment, for instance. In some of the other cost-benefit stuff, y isn't going to be infection. I'm going to show you some effects later on in these kids' lives on their job earnings. So that's a really good one to compare because we have job earnings in dollars or shillings, and we have costs in dollars. So we can actually just say, hey, deworming led people to earn X more dollars, and it costs a certain amount of money. We can just get a standard rate of return. So that's a very good question, but we can't really answer the attractiveness question yet until another few slides. There was another hand up. Yeah.
So in theory, maybe you'd want to search for like a tipping point where like the rate of infection might fall on its own, but that's just so sporadic enough for.
Yeah. Yeah, let me trace it out. So you guys have been talking about it, so it may just be easier to do it this way. So this is the question. This is a certain what I'm calling saturation proportion of the population that gets deworming, and that goes from 0 to 1. And then let's just call these the benefits. Okay, and I'm not going to define this formally because it's going to get us sort of out of our linear world. But just think of the benefits of deworming in terms of this cross-school externality. So this is like a cross-school externality benefit. The way we're modeling it right now is we're saying that benefit just increases linearly in P. That's what I just showed you. You just scale up B plus C linearly. We've assumed that with a linear regression model. But you guys have been saying, there have been several comments, which are very good comments, that we'd love to answer. We don't have the data to answer. And unfortunately, the epidemiologists don't fully understand themselves. I mean, they understand this issue in their mathematical models, but they don't have the data to really answer, which is, you guys were hinting a little bit at this. Maybe in reality, over here, if I deworm a little bit, I don't gain very much. But eventually, I reach, you were saying, a tipping point where now I'm really starting to eliminate infection. And then maybe as I get close to 100%, it almost has to sort of level off. I think this would be the kind of curve that people would think is plausible. We don't know if it's right, but it kind of seems plausible. Now, we were saying before, is our assumption of linearity reasonable? Well, remember, most of our data is, say, between 20% and 60%. Maybe in our range, maybe it looks pretty linear. I mean, it has a certain slope, but it looks pretty linear. The fear is what was raised before, that the linear relationship over this range, you don't want to extrapolate it all the way out to 1, right? I think that was exactly your point before. I don't know if this makes any sense to folks, but the idea is you have data in a certain range, you have a locally linear relationship over that range. When you extrapolate out, then you may get the wrong answer. You may get this kind of gap between truth and reality when you extrapolate. We can't answer that question, and since we don't know exactly where we are in this range and whether the curvature goes upwards or downwards, we impose linearity. But it's really just an assumption of convenience due to data limitations. And that's what we face in reality very often in research. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Is there any other experiment that has a lot of data, but sometimes they wouldn't sound like under the US or something that might apply to the future things look like protection?
I'm going to talk next lecture about the Kenyan National Deworming Program. After this research was done, in part because of the findings I'll show you next, the government launched mass national deworming in Kenya. And we tried to work with them and many conversations with them to have them roll it out in a way so we could estimate this curve. Because they have thousands of schools, literally. And if only they could phase it in with certain timing, we could help them do it in a clever way where we could have different saturation levels around different schools over time until everybody eventually got brought into the program. But politically, it was basically impossible for them to do. The feeling was playing with the design a little bit would have a political backlash. Now, the flip side to that is, there were inevitable delays when they tried to roll out the program. Stuff got held up anyway. Why not, if there's going to be a gradual rollout, why not build in a research design so we can learn from it? But that isn't what happened. So we'd love to have all this data, but it never kind of panned out with the Kenyan government. Okay, let me, just go back. I kind of jumped to this slide at the end. So let me just jump back to where we were. Apologies. If you have like a photographic memory, you're bored right now. Okay, educational impact. So, there is another clicker question. I'm sorry, one more clicker question. We're turning out educational performance. I already showed you all these infection effects. If you get dewormed yourself or you're near people who are dewormed, you're healthier. You have less worms. That comes through in the data. The question is, what are the implications for education? So the clicker question is, let me just start the poll. Which of these effects do you think, now before I show you the results, I know we talked about it a little bit. Before I show you the results, which of these different dimensions of education do you think are most important in driving how well you do in the labor market, how much money you make in Kenya? Is it school participation, like attendance? Is it test scores? Is it extracurriculars? All of the above? Or is it basically impossible to say? So let's just take another 20 seconds. Okay, just another few seconds. Okay, so most people said school participation, which if you read the article, sort of what we end up focusing on. Some of you say test scores. Test scores are clearly important in Kenya because you need to do well on tests to even get into high school or get into college. So test scores do matter a lot. Extracurriculars, who's to say? They might also be very important. All the above. Okay, I mean, we're going to show evidence that it seems like this program is going to affect school participation the most, and it does affect labor market outcomes, so that seems like a key channel, but we can't really rule out the other ones perfectly. Okay. So I already mentioned how we collected this data on school attendance, or what we call school participation. We sent our surveyors out to schools on unannounced days, and we saw who was in school. We physically saw them, recorded their name, are they present? If they weren't present, we asked the teacher and the classmates, are they absent? Have they dropped out? Or have they transferred to another school? And we tried to keep track of that. So if they transferred to another school, we tried to follow them at the other school. Remember, we were doing almost all the rural schools in this area. So typically we'd be going to that other school anyway. We just had this spreadsheet. We just kept updating. So when people transfer, we move them to another school, check for them in the new school. And we combine absent and dropping out into non-participation in school. And there were some very good practical reasons for doing that. Sometimes when kids are absent for a week or two or even a month, it's not clear if they've dropped out. The family may have a temporary problem. The kid may temporarily need to work. They may come back in a few weeks. So sometimes when kids are absent, you don't know if they've dropped out or not until later. So we group those together and say, like, are you in school or are you not in school? Just the simplest definition. We can verify it by seeing the kid, and that's school participation. That's an outcome measure. So what do we find? Again, I'm going to compare the different groups of schools. Remember, group 1 is treatment, and this is the data from 1998, but you get similar patterns in group 2 in 1999 when they get phased in. If we look at different age groups, we find slightly different effects, but in all cases, school participation is higher in group 1. So here, the average school participation in groups 2 and 3 is about 3/4, right? It's about 0.75, 0.73, 0.77, so about 0.75. The average in group 1 is 0.84. That means there's about 9 percentage points higher attendance on any given day when we showed up at school. That's a big reduction in absenteeism. It's a reduction in absenteeism by about 1/3. That's a pretty big effect. Okay, another group are these older girls. Remember, the older girls, most of them didn't get the drugs because of this rule that existed at the time about not treating the adolescent girls. But they still showed reductions in worm infections because of the within-school externality, and we can show that. Their school participation also improves, but by about 5 percentage points instead of 9 percentage points. So again, the kind of health gains were a little smaller, and the school attendance gains were a little smaller, but it's still pretty sizable, actually. School absenteeism fell by about 1/4 in this group. Absenteeism was about 20% here, and about 5% less for the treated schools. The biggest gains actually are in the youngest grades. You can see in preschool and grades 1 and 2, so the equivalent of like kindergarten and grades 1 and 2, the gain is about 10 percentage points. So there's a lot of absenteeism among the youngest kids. They show up, they don't, they stay home, they get sick. Among the oldest kids, even in the control schools, there's pretty good school attendance. It's like 87, 88%. But even in that group, it's better in the treatment schools. So basically in every demographic group, in group 1, school attendance is much better, statistically significantly better. And when we combine them across all these groups, the average gain is about 7 percentage points. And that's statistically significant. Okay? And since average attendance was about 74, 75% in the control group, this reduces absenteeism about 1/4. Really big effects on schooling. Okay, so let's leave it there and we'll pick up next time. And if you have a paper copy and you haven't handed it in yet, give it to Pierre and Jonas. And from now on, it'll be all online.